Shalom, ladies. Thank you all for being here. Today, we are going to talk about what did Yeshua do? And the reason that I brought this topic today is because it's been coming up a lot in a lot of different avenues, a lot of different pages that I'm on, people asking questions. And I think it's more about people being curious because they're having seeds put into them and they're not really sure, what is this all about? So what we're going to talk about is one way, not the only way, but one way that you can have this conversation with people about, did Yeshua abolish the law? Because that's a big topic. I'm giving you the very, very condensed version today. And at the end, I'm going to give you a reference that you can go check out that is very extensive and is one of the things that was pivotal for me understanding this. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. It's kind of a basic, but it's also important. And so those are the kinds of things that I would like for you to be thinking about as we proceed through this. Are stories that you have, experiences you've had with people in having these conversations. I'm going to give you one example for myself later on. And I just want you to be thinking about it because at the end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about your experiences as well. All right. We're going to start with 1 Peter 3:15 and 16 as to the reason why we're doing this. But set apart Yehovah Elohim in your hearts, and always be ready to give an answer to everyone asking you a reason concerning the expectation that is in you, with meekness and fear, having a good conscience, so that when they speak against you as doers of evil, those who falsely accuse your good behavior in Messiah shall be ashamed. Wow. See if I can get my mouth working right today. So the word that I'm going to focus on there is that expectation. And in the Greek, it is the word elpis. It means expectation or hope. The Septuagint is what we can look at to relate the Greek to the Hebrew so that we have a better idea. Well, the Septuagint relates it to H983, betah, which means confidence, security, without fear, securely. The first mention is Genesis 34:25. And it came to be on the third day when they were in pain that two of the sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. That word boldly is the word that is related to that word expectation in that scripture. Also, Hebrew 4009, bibtah, which is confidence and security. The first mention of that is Job 8:13 through 14. And it says, so are the paths of all who forget El, and the expectancy of a defiled one does perish, whose refuge is cut off, and whose trust is a spider's web. The word trust there is that mibtah. Now, this is my favorite one that we're going to look at. And that is H4268, mahaseh, a refuge, the person to whom one flees. That first reference is Job 24:8. It says, they are wet with the showers of the hills and have embraced a rock for lack of shelter. Shelter is the word for mahaseh. That is the word translated shelter. And I just thought it was so great because we are able to see how, if we go back, let me go back to this first scripture. And I don't know if you can see my pointer or not, but what I want you to see is if we replace that word expectation, so, but set apart Yehovah Elohim in your hearts, and always be ready to give an answer to everyone asking you a reason concerning the refuge. And I thought, what a great way to look at that. We want to be able to give an answer for that refuge. It's the hope. Hope is how we commonly talk about it, the hope that we have. But that refuge of Him is what we're really talking about. We want to be able to explain to them why He is our refuge and why it is important to us that we follow the instructions that He is giving us. So we're going to talk about exactly that. We're going to talk about our refuge. What did Yeshua come to do? I mean, we know what He came to do. He obeyed the Torah, the instructions. We know that in the time of the disciples, the only reference they had was the Tanakh. And if you don't know what that is the entire Hebrew Bible, what is typically called the Old Testament. And it is also called Mikra, what is read. But that Tanakh is an acronym that stands for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. And what those words are basically, we know what Torah first 5 books, the instructions. The Nevi'im are the prophets, and the Ketuvim are the writings. And even the writings are broken down further. So Torah, from the root word yirah, means to teach or instruction. So that's why I say that we are following the instruction. It's always been the same instruction from Him. So that's what we do. We follow His instructions. Because why? Because obedience is better than sacrifice. He wants us to always hit the mark to the best of our ability. We're not always going to, but He does give us direction in how to do it. So I just wonder sometimes what makes others think, and we know because we were there once too, that we thought that there was a new covenant and a whole new way of doing things. But I heard one teacher, and I apologize that I don't remember who it was, but I heard one teacher talking about it, saying, do we think that Yehovah is a schizophrenic? And what I mean by that is there are going to be sacrifices. The temple will be set up again in the millennial kingdom. So if we have the temple set up in the millennial kingdom, we have the temple set up in the time of Torah and the prophets. So why in the middle, even though we understand there is no temple, would His instructions change? So He starts one place, He changes it, and then He goes back. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's always going to want us to follow the instruction that He gives. One of the things I can tell you is that my walk in this, coming into this, has been so much better than walking, and I say this all the time, but walking in that woo-woo walk in the Christian church. There was always this kind of feeling of, oh, we can just kind of go with the flow, and whatever the Spirit says, that's what we want to do, and that kind of a feel. But when we start pursuing Torah and we understand there are clear, distinct directions that He gives us for all the parts of our life. We even learned about the Nidah last week, which was really a great conversation, and I was really glad to be a part of that. But He gives us those instructions because obedience is better than sacrifice, and He wants us to know. It's not a question. It's not this, oh, we can do this, or maybe we can't, or we should do that, and maybe we can't. But there's a clear set of directions. But in that set of directions, there are various ways that people follow those things and walk them out. And that's okay, because we're all working on our understanding, and it's never going to be complete until the day that He returns and we are able to walk in the millennial kingdom with Him. It's okay. Do those things, those instructions that He gives you to the best of your ability, the way that He leads you, and don't forsake them. That's really important. So I love this reference. I have had this for many, many years. And what I love about it is that it shows how 1/3 of the Brit Hadashah is from the Torah, the Tanakh. 1/3 of it is from that. So that's a lot if you think about it. I mean, so the rest of it is really an expounding, not an expansion, not a changing, but kind of a clarification and a growing in what all that instruction that already existed was. If you want that reference, I did put it at the bottom of the screen here, and this PowerPoint will be attached in the cafe so that when you come to look at it, you will have that exact address so that you can find it. So what did Yeshua say? So we're going to look at Matthew 5:17 and 18. And it says, "Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets." Now, this is coming from the Scriptures 2009 version. "I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done." So for me, the Scriptures 2009 version, it's obvious to me that these people who did this translation have an understanding of pursuing the Torah observant life. So to me, their version is pretty clear as to what it's trying to say. But let's talk about, because this seems to be a really big source of contention when you're having a conversation with a Christian who says, well, you don't need to follow the law, that was nailed to the cross. So we're talking right now about Yeshua's words. What did he say about it? So the King James Version of verse 17 says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." Now, we're going to look at the definition of fulfill. And I picked up all of them. We're not going to talk about all of them, but the very first one says to put into effect. So if he put it into effect, then we're on the path and we're following the way. We're walking in the instructions to meet the requirements of, to measure up to. The definition 1D is the one that I kind of was like, well, I can see what it's saying, but it doesn't apply to what we're trying to discuss here. To bring to an end. And the example it gives is, she came to install herself and fulfill her time at the house. So what I think is interesting about it is that if we're looking at this definition of fulfill, does fulfill mean the same thing as abolish? And I didn't look up the Webster's definition of abolish, but we know what abolish means: to do away with, to cut off, to be done with. All of these things is what abolish means. So do abolish and fulfill mean the same thing? They don't. We know that. We know that. That's one of the things that is, as I said, a source of contention that people bring up all the time. Well, he fulfilled it. Well, okay, he fulfilled the spring feast. He fulfilled part, but he didn't fulfill all. We're awaiting the completion and the fulfillment. It's not a done thing. There's more to come. So I'm going to tell you about my discussion with the leaders that I was under at the time that I came to this understanding. I basically sat down and I said, if you can't observe the Sabbath properly, then I can't stay here. And so the question was, well, what are you studying? What are you looking at? What are you reading? What have you been watching? All of those things. And of course, the first reaction a few months before that was, that's too much legalism. So as I approached them, what I consider a second time with this situation, I just said, okay, so let me ask you this way. I said, why do you not lie? Well, the answer is because the word says, don't lie, don't give false witness. Don't do those things. Why do you not have affairs? Well, the word says that we shouldn't commit adultery. Do you murder somebody? Well, no, because the word says, okay, so, and I went through several of just the 10 commandments, and then came back to number 4, and I said, so all of these things are true. They're still true. Yeshua even said that if you look with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery. So why is it that this number 4 is ignored? Why is that? That's my question. And so that was the beginning of a much deeper discussion about, okay, well, I can kind of see where that's coming from. And then I gave them some resources and they started investigating it. And it turned out that they understood, and it became a really good thing ultimately. So let's talk about what our 3 main disagreements are with people. I've mentioned this before, but we're going to talk about it just a little bit once more. So the first disagreement is, what is food? And the reason I put the question that way is because it is a question of what is food. Those things that we don't eat, the word doesn't call them food. It says these things are food, the things that we can eat, like in the meat, those things that chew the cud and have a split hoof, fish that have fins and scales, that's food. The rest of it, those other things that we don't eat and we don't partake in, it's not food. That's a simple statement, but I've used it before. I've used it with one of my friends at work who's like, do you want a salad? It comes with this, this, and this, and bacon bits on top and blah, blah. I was like, that's not food. And so she always looks at me and she's like, what? And then I'll say, it has the bacon on it. And she's like, oh, yeah, sorry. But that's one of the main disagreements. The second one is, when is the Sabbath? I've watched several videos on this. My favorite probably is Jim Staley's video about when is the Sabbath, and how he brings up that the Catholic Church proclaims themselves to be the one who changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. And I was trying to think of the name of that video, and I'm thinking it might be called When is the Sabbath? I should have looked that up. I apologize for that, but you can go look it up. It's Jim Staley, and it's about the Sabbath. And he brings up the information from the Catholic Church website, and it's very interesting. So then the last one is, what holidays should we observe? The first thing that I started with was that I cut out Christmas. That happened about 2 years before I understood any of the rest of it. And it was because of a friend who posted a video, and it just made perfect sense to me how it was viewed in these videos. And I couldn't do it anymore. And my mom walked right along with me into it, which was really amazing, because she was very, very young in her walk, even though, she was a lot older than me, but she was very young in her walk. And she just was like, no, you're right. You're right. And I just was so blessed by that. So those are the 3 main disagreements. There are more, I'm sure, and you may have some, but those are going to be the biggies that come up. So I want to talk about this. We cannot force someone to hear a message they're not ready to receive, but you must never underestimate the power of planting a seed. This is true in my own life. There was a man who sold forms to the businesses that I worked for, and back in 1999, late 1999, early 2000, he started talking to me about things, and he would always say, oh, you're going to think I'm crazy, but. And he just kept planting those seeds. Every time I would see him, he would just plant a seed, and he would kind of talk about, he even bought me a bag of gummy bears and gave it to me. And he was like, I don't eat them, but I thought you might enjoy them. And I was like, why don't you eat them? and it just gave him another opportunity to plant another seed. And so, I mean, it wasn't till 10 plus years later that I began to understand all that he had been telling me for all those years. So never underestimate the power of planting a seed when you have the opportunity. It's just an important part of what we do. So let's talk now about you. I want to hear from some of you about any stories that you may have or discussions that you've had with others. Or how about any practice apologetics? And what I mean by that is, how many arguments have you had in your head with somebody where you went and studied something or you had some thoughts and ideas? Those are the things I want to hear about today. And I gave you my 2 cents worth of the discussion I had by using the 10 commandments. And so I'm curious to know, what discussions have you guys had? And kind of let's hear it. I want to hear your stories. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. We'll go back to it at the end. You can raise your hand, unmute yourself.
Okay, 2 things. Jim Staley's teaching, I don't know if you can read the chat or see the chat. It's called And He Rested.
Okay.
And it's a 3-part series.
Thank you.
I looked it up real quick for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
One of the things, when I started walking this walk, and I went to my daughter's house and she had made something with pork, and I said, well, I respect that, but you need to understand that I no longer will be eating pork, and I will no longer be eating shellfish and catfish and things of that nature. And their question to me was, well, why? And I said, when we read the scripture about Peter's vision, it is Peter, right? I'm a little tired. So, vision, I said, it's been misinterpreted. And I said, so often we just take the word of what we have grown up believing instead of actually opening our word and reading the scripture. And I told them, I said, if you will open your Bible and read the entire chapter, he gives you the interpretation of that dream, of that vision. And I said, and he backs it up in the next chapter. And it has nothing to do with food. It has to do with the way that we look at people, the way that we treat people. And it goes back to Yeshua saying, love thy neighbor as thyself. It doesn't matter the color of their skin. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. We're supposed to treat them the same way we would want to be treated. So I have planted that seed and I have pretty much stuck to it. Now, do they do perfectly? I have one daughter that goes out of her way to make sure that if she's fixing something, like, I'll give you an example. Last Thanksgiving, she made sweet potatoes and she was about to pile on the marshmallows. And then she went, oh, Mom, you can't eat these. They've got pork in them. So she took and cleared off an entire section of the sweet potatoes and left the marshmallows off so that I could have sweet potatoes with my dinner. My oldest daughter, she tends to forget that I don't eat pork. So she will sometimes have pork, or she will sometimes have a fish that I don't eat. And I just respectfully eat around it. And I don't eat the pork. I don't eat. And they both have told me that they respect that I'm sticking to my guns. But I also told them, what you need to understand is it's not a salvation issue. It's a choice that I've made because God, Yehovah, says this is not food. And I tell them the reason why it's not food.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I had thought about it and was going to put it in my notes about 3 times and didn't get it in there, but about it not being a salvation issue, because we make that choice. We can choose to go, okay, your word says this and this is what I'm going to do. Or we can go, well, I think that Peter's vision says something different. So I'm going to, so I'm glad you brought that up. So,
Well, I
hey,
also recently just did a study on copyrights and what that means to the Bible. Because, well, first of all, let me back up. Back in the mid 90s, I worked for BMI, which is a copyright company for music. But I still had to be familiar with all of the copyright laws and what they said. And in order for something to be copyrighted, it has to be changed from its original format in such a way that it makes it an original. And that's why we have so many different versions of the Bible, because they've taken and they have mistranslated words to make it completely different than the original text. Does that make sense? So when people ask me about that, I say, open up your Bible. How many Bibles do you have? You'll find a copyright in the beginning of each one of them. You'll even see it in the King James Bible. It's just not called copyright, it's called license. But it's the same thing. They've changed it from its original text. Hence, we have so many different versions, which is probably the reason why we have so many different churches and beliefs.
well, and everything is fractured. We talked about the beliefs of the Jewish believers, not I think maybe it was the last one, maybe the time before. And we know the Christian church, all the denominations and all the different churches that there are. So it is something, that's for sure. Kimberly, do you have a story that you could share with us?
Well, I don't know if I have a story, but this is definitely timely for us. Um, just this past year during COVID, my husband discovered a Torah class on YouTube, and he started listening to it, and it rocked my world. I mean, it absolutely rocked my world. But then again, there were these things that I've never understood, and they never really added up. And I've sought the Lord, and the Lord has spoken to me about certain things. And golly gee whiz, the guy was like confirming all this stuff that I didn't hear at church, but I felt like the Lord had showed me. So yeah, so that's where we're at. And I can say probably even this week, my husband and I have had this heavy discussion even about this topic. So for us, like for the food, we were watching Torah class, and he was explaining that the other stuff wasn't food. And as I sought the Lord about that, I don't know. It occurred to me that if this was important to the Lord, what is it to me to eat pork? I happen to love pork, and I love shrimp, and I love. And I have to say, I have grieved a little bit. I've taken some time to grieve the loss of that in my life. But what is it to me? If it's important to the Father, then it's nothing to me. And that's kind of what we just decided. So as we're learning and we're growing and we're trying to figure out how does this law that he gave his people so long ago fit into my 21st century life, and what parts of it, because Jesus did come and he did change some things for us. So how do we look at this? How do we honor the Father with it because it's important to him? And how do we apply it? So by the way, I love this group so much because I feel like it's helping me kind of, I can listen in on something, and I can kind of wade through it that week and seek the Lord, and I'm trying just to take it one bit at a time. So that's my story, really.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for just being vulnerable with us where you're at. We've
That's what I
all,
was going to say, Misty. Like,
yeah.
thank you, because that's the heart, just so you know, Kimberly. So you and I haven't had a chance to get to know each other, but the heart of this whole community is to have a place where you're just getting started and you're like, I'm still eating a pulled pork sandwich. And we're like, cool. Or I have the menorah set up next to my Christmas tree and we're like, cool. Like it's a no judgment zone, no shame zone. It's like we've all been there. And it's so I have to just full disclosure. When this all started, the reason it started was I'm praying. I'm like, Father, there's things I struggle with and I still grieve. I mean, I still grieve Christmas caroling. I still grieve doing Christmas cantatas. And I felt like there was no place for me to say that to anyone because I would be, everyone would be like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just, they'd be like Torah Costals or, they'd be so like terrorists about it. And I was scared that they would look down at me like, gosh, you've been doing this a long time. And I'm still struggling. And you know what? Maybe 6 months ago, I had some clam chowder because I missed it so bad. And then I was like, that wasn't really worth it, Father. And I'm like, I'm the daughter of the Most High King. And I just went and ate in the kitchen with the servants. And that's basically the way he's really showing me. Is like, you don't eat. I mean, I watched Downton Abbey and I'm like, it'd be like me going down and eating the leftovers like they have to eat. And he's saying, no, you belong on the table upstairs to eat what I eat. And if you can't have dinner with me and we can't eat the same food together, I mean, you can, it doesn't keep you from being my daughter, but you don't have to do that. Like, you get to eat with me and I can't go down there. I can't eat that food with you, but I can eat this food with you. And he wants us to be set apart. So if people start going, it does talk about a conversation is when you tell someone, oh, I'm sorry, I don't eat that, or you're picking something out. And I'm not so crazy that I'm like, take it back, it touched my lettuce. I'll just be like, scrape it off. So I just want you to feel safe, Kimberly. It's okay to say, like, you know what, we still have pepperoni pizza, because there's some of us, you will hear, we're doing Shabbats, there's Shabbat dinners with pepperoni pizza. And or Dr. Probably heard at the conference, I mean, she shared, what she served, like shrimp scampi or something for one night. If there's someone in here that says a problem, you need to let one of us know, and we will lovingly remind them of our values and core values here, because that's the thing, is we're all walking this out, and some things are permissible to you and they're not permissible to me. He may be like, you know what, this is something to me. Now all of a sudden I used to loving shrimp. Now when I take a bite of it, it tastes like I'm eating a finger. Like I'm biting into a finger and I'm like, oh, it's not food to me anymore.
Yeah.
Now, do I still crave pulled pork? I used to own a barbecue restaurant. Sister, I love me some pulled pork, and I still grieve it. I don't grieve bacon anymore, but there's things. So please, the whole point of that, and whoever's listening on replay, the point is not a salvation issue. Thank you, Carol. This is not about that. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Because that's what he did for us, is that but we don't want to have things that keep us from being able to approach him. And he's saying, so just when you eat that, then there might be something that makes you feel a little like sluggish, or the things that, bring sickness to your body. Cause look at every flu, it comes through a pig. Like, I mean, it comes through swine, the birds dropping onto them. And then we eat that. I mean, it's all through all the things. The birds pick up the stuff from the swine. There's a reason that all that happens. And he's like, I don't want you to eat pull filters. Like, I just don't want you to eat the things that are pull filters. Why are you sucking on a pull filter and putting tartar sauce on it? That's weird. Why are you eating that? But when we're reading things, we're like, oh, no, he says this, but they weren't even thinking, we're talking to these Jews, so we're not even thinking of that as food. So they're not discussing that. And I put the link on here for Robin Gould, Dr. Robin Gould. We adore her. She's one of our sisters in here. She's one of our contributors, amazing. And I put the link down here. She wrote a book. It's called Beacon to Bacon, or Bacon or Beacon, something like that. And she does such a great job explaining, super simple. It's one of the Becky books, super simple, what that whole dream meant, and about how the Father spoke to him in a parable so that he would be released. So that, look at the very next thing, he gets to go and he gets to meet Cornelius. He would have gone to Cornelius and said, you're not clean. You're goyim. You're not clean. I can't come see you. I can't talk to you. And he would have had a missed opportunity. So he had to explain to him that, no, he was talking about people. He wasn't talking about food. So, but he was using a dream, no different than he talked about hiding talents or planting crops, or he was speaking to Peter in a way that Peter would understand. And so what happens then, he showed him that it was people. And she gives you a really great understanding of all that. So then the next day, or the next thing you see, he goes and sees Cornelius, and he's able to walk into his home. That would never have happened before. But he walked into his home because he realized that no, Father had made him clean so I could come and he's a man, and he wasn't talking about food, because those things were, that wouldn't even have confused him. But he was using that as an example for him. And it's just a really beautiful thing. And my daughter, when she was young, she would say, hey, her grandma would be like, oh, he abolished that. Well, she'd get the whole thing from them, and she'd tell her grandparents, hey, if I can say no to a pepperoni pizza, I can say no to drugs. So you don't have to worry about me. So blessings to you, Kimberly. I love that you are brave to say that. It makes my heart like happy that you feel safe that you could say that here. So
Charlie, I was hoping you would share your story about the ham sandwich that you got when you went to somebody's house.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I went to a pastor. It was my pastor, and I was the women's pastor at the church, and I was walking this out, and that was really fun. Like one foot in and I was literally straddling, and I really did have the menorah up next to the Christmas tree. And as I was going through that process, she invited me over to lunch one day because she had just married the pastor. He was widowed, and he'd gotten remarried, and she wanted to get to know me. And she had this like famous ham sandwich that she would make, apparently was her famous meal. And she made this thing, and I got there, and first of all, I was like, oh, I forgot to tell her I have some eating restrictions. Some people I hear, they'll say, oh, I'm vegan, and that makes it easy, or vegetarian, and it makes it easy for them because then that way they don't have any issues, and everyone seems to accept that. Isn't that funny? But it really does take bravery to say, something, there's this, I biblically eat. If Jesus doesn't eat it, I don't eat it. If he didn't do it, if he eats it, I ate it. I just eat what he eats. That's what I do. Because I'm kind of like, what would Jesus do, girl? And I love that that's the title of this. So I get to her house, and we're so excited. We sit down. It's like we're going to get to know her. We're all fancy. She has the fancy china out, and she brings out these little tiny, sandwiches, and it's her famous like ham thing. And I was like, oh, I don't even know what to do. And you know what I did? I just thanked Father for the opportunity for fellowship with this amazing woman. I ate the sandwiches. I didn't want to bring her. Why he would never want to bring hurt and shame to her. So I would never do that. So I sat down with her and loved her and got to know her and ate the sandwiches. And okay, I was cut off from all my people or for till sundown, whatever. It was not a big deal. He was just like, hey, love on her. Just love her. So I hope that that's received from everyone. We don't want to come in. Who wants to follow? Oh, I don't eat that. Take it away. It's like, oh, Jesus would never do that. He just never would. Remember, he sat with a woman at the Samaritan at the well. And guess what? It was more than just the fact that she was, all the things that we focus on about her. The thing that we don't focus on about her is that the Samaritans did it differently, wrong, according to you don't even worship in the right place. You're not even doing this the right way. You're doing it all the wrong ways. You're on the wrong mountain. You're doing the wrong thing, right? That was the big deal. That was what was the separation with the Samaritans. They thought they were dirty. They thought they were because they were doing it all wrong. But he sat with her. And that is something we have to remember, is that's the example that we have, not just about the fact that he loved a woman who maybe had been married a few times and he was bringing life to her and healing in that area. But he was saying that he was crossing a divide about people who are so focused on doing it all the right way. He was saying, that's not it. You're not getting it. You're not even getting it. Because if that's what you're focusing on, your heart is so not right. This is not what we're about, right? It's so personal. It is really so personal.
I love that. That's one of my favorite stories, Charlie, because I have dealt with that. I mean, I remember being in a restaurant. I will tell you, I did send it back, but that's only because it didn't tell me on the menu. It had it on there. When she said it in front of me, I had this look on my face, and she was like, is something wrong? And I was like, yeah, I don't.
If I'm at a restaurant, I will send it back. I'm like, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask. Apparently I didn't make my, now I'm better at saying, is there pork in this? Yes. I don't eat pork. So make sure you tell me if anything has pork on it or something, The other thing, you think of refried beans, they use pork lard to make refried beans in a Mexican restaurant. So I just ask for the boiled beans, you learn, and there's grace covers a multitude of missing the mark, right? Not our salvation.
Yes. So I wanted to share this scripture. I'm looking it up one second here. Where they even had disagreement. This is in Judges chapter 12. And it's verse 6. And it says, then they said unto him, and this is a King James version, say now Shibboleth. And so he said, Sibboleth. for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Jordan, and there fell at the time of Ephraimites 40 and 2,000. And that was all about the difference between saying Sibboleth versus Shibboleth, a scene or a sheen. So I love that verse. That's one of my favorites about the disagreement. Carol, you had your hand up.
Yes. You were talking about, shrimp being your favorite. Honey, I could eat my weight in shrimp. I loved it so much. Same with lobster. My dad was a deep sea diver and we got it fresh out of the ocean all the time. Well, about 2 months ago, a colleague and I, we were down South Texas working, and we went to this Japanese restaurant, and the grill next to us, it's one of those where you have the grill, you've got two grills together, and you can only have one chef doing one grill, and then another chef comes and does the other grill. Anyways, it was so close. Everybody at this one grill had ordered shrimp or lobster or scallops or something of that nature. And the chef threw it on the grill, and the smell of those things cooking literally made me nauseous. I was sitting there gagging. I thought I was going to have to get up and leave the restaurant. That's how bad it was. And it was like, okay, Father, that tells me that you have taken my taste for these things away. And I thank you so much. Now I can just simply say, I can't get it past my nose.
It just takes time. It just takes time. Once you've made that decision, you do grieve it. Oh man, I did for sure. But then you get past it and you're like, oh, you're like, just like that experience. Oh, that's not food. Oh, I don't want that. Oh, and then you have experiences like Charlie's where you're like, I know it's not food, but it's what's set in front of me, and I need to love these people. So just give me the grace, Father, because unclean is not the same as being in sin.
Right.
Unclean is something different.
Right. And that's what people.
It's not fit for service. It's about, it's being in a place where we learn this over and over, and we kind of pound it home around here, is that the word is the tameh and tahor, and it's about being fit for service. It's being fit for fruitful, being able to be fruitful, being able to sit at the table with a king, right? That's what that means. And the other things are just not, they're fractured. They're not fit for service. They're used for something different. Like they're the cleanup crew. Like that's what that's about. Yeah. Not about, it's not about that. And you think about, even meat sacrificed to idols, we're told, hey, you know what? You just pray, Father, fix it.
Well, how about all the meat that, gets prayed over by the imams and all of that stuff? I mean, that's something else that you have to think about as well, but we just pray over it and go, yep, okay, it's all yours. So, Sarita, Einagul, we have not heard from either one of you. Do either of you ladies have something you want to share with us? I'm going to say no. If you think of something here in a minute, you're welcome to. There's Sarita. Hi, Sarita. You have something you want to share with us? Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to my screen right quick and just show you this last slide. And this is the teaching that changed everything for me. 119 Ministries is very good at breaking down the word. I don't agree with everything that they say. There's a couple of their teachings that I'm like, I don't think that I necessarily agree with that. But I will tell you that this teaching is the one that changed everything for me, just because I was in a place where I had left it right here, and I said, okay, Father, I know I'm missing a piece. I don't know what it is. I don't quite understand what it is that you're trying to explain to me, but I'm going to leave it here. And when you're ready to show me that piece, I'm ready to see it and I'm going to receive it. Just show it to me. And it was not long that a friend of mine posted this video. The link that I have there is the actual link for the video itself. You can watch it. You do not have to buy it. You can go to 119's website and you can look up that teaching and watch it for free online. You do not have to purchase the DVD, but that was the best picture that I could find to share it. So I just wanted you guys to see that. 119 is a great resource and they have so much to offer. The website that I used when I first started learning things is no longer available. Kind of made me sad. I've tried searching for it many times and I just can't find it anymore. So it was a little bit disheartening, but that again will be as part of the notes that are in for the show in the cafe. So if nobody else has anything at the moment, I'm going to pray us out and we'll stop this recording as soon as I'm done praying. And then we'll have a little bit of a chat after, okay? Father, you are so good to us and I'm so thankful for your presence. I'm thankful for your word. I'm thankful for your guidance. I'm thankful that your Torah is the fruit of our salvation, not the root of it. And that you have given us these instructions because you love us, because you have told us that obedience is better than sacrifice. And I that you showed us what Yeshua did and what he said so that we could better understand what it is that you are calling us to. I ask that you would bless each and every one of these ladies who is here. Bless all of those who listen on the replay. Father, give them your supernatural wisdom. Give them your guidance. Show them your ways for their life so that they can be hitting the mark. They can walk in that obedience. I'm just so thankful for your word, Father. I ask that you would bless each and every person in the name of Yeshua. Amen.